Smith, a public educator in 19 years in Indiana. She's running for Indiana State Senate District 18. Next, Tabitha Bartley, a disabled Marine Corps veteran. She's running in Indiana State Senate District 7. Next, we have Stan Albaugh, a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, serving for over 30 years in the Air Force, and he's running in Indiana State Senate District 24. And also Tom Hetty, lifelong public educator, Flora, Indiana, and he's running in Indiana House of Representatives, District 38. And last but not least, Joe Mackey, and he's our host for this evening, and he's running for Indiana's 4th Congressional District at the federal level in the U.S. House of Representatives. So welcome all of you, and welcome to all of our viewers tonight over Facebook Live. To get things started, I'd just like to start it with a question. And this is a question to everyone, but I'll start by presenting it to Stan. And the question is, what do you believe to be the #1 issue facing Hoosiers in regards to education? What is the issue that's most important, or do you think that we need to be spending the most time addressing? And I'll let you take it away, Stan.
Oh, there are so many issues. It's really a little bit tough to prioritize which is the first or the most important. What most people don't realize that in 2008, we passed the property tax cap amendment to our school funding process. And that completely changed or restructured the way that we did school funding. During that time, that property tax cap took away $1.8 billion. And then the reduction in some of the legislative policies caused our funding to continue to shrink throughout the next decade. That property tax cap in Avon School Corporation alone over that decade cost them $68 million in funding. So now nationally, when you look at it, we are down in excess of $1.9 billion in our funding formula from where we were pre-2008. And yes, the structure has in fact changed, but the need to start to view education as not an expense, but as an investment, because it's how much it directly correlates to the growth of the economy and to Indiana in whole. And so I think the funding formula needs to be reworked, and I think we need some significant changes in that area.
And for those of you who are educators here, I mean, how has that lack of a funding affected you specifically, or what have you seen, and how does that impacted you so far? Anybody?
I'll take that one as a start. So right now, if you look at our schools, 92% of school corporations in Indiana have some kind of staffing shortage. If you go on the Department of Education's website, there's probably close to 1,000 job openings, and we are already a couple weeks into the school year in most buildings. So if you wanted a teaching job, you could probably go online and find one right now. Now, part of that is due to that funding cut because Indiana ranks 51st in wage growth in the United States. So since 2009, if you took teacher wages and accounted for inflation, I probably make more in 2009 than I make right now if you account for inflation. Indiana is 35th in overall teacher pay, but 51st in wage growth, because if you count for inflation, our wages have not grown. So that funding, that's part of it. And another part of that, I mean, we're 92% of our school districts have teacher shortages. But then look at the overall amount of services that our schools have. So we have schools that are not providing the basic needs that they have. I teach in a school right now that has about 43% English language learners, and it's one of the highest numbers in the state. So we have students that need that extra care in teachers' aides and teachers' assistants because they have language barriers. We can't always find aides and the assistants to fill those positions to meet the needs of those students. So we're talking equity in education, as well as the funding for the teachers. So meeting the needs of the students where they are, the needs of the students for the free and reduced lunches, the needs of the students for transportation to schools. Some school systems can't afford to have buses, so they outsource buses to a private company, or they have parent drop-offs. In my school corporation, again, we renamed our football stadium for the Logan Sport Memorial Hospital football stadium because we needed money from outside sources. So outside sources donated money to our school, and then so we renamed our football stadium. So that funding formula that Stan talked about, it counts for a lack of teachers in 92% of our school districts. It accounts for lack of resources in the schools. It accounts for the fact that buses may be a problem in the schools. And then it accounts for the need to ask for outside funding sources to provide resources in the building. So it's an all-encompassing problem in our schools.
Wow. So I mean, that lack of funding at all levels is, you're seeing it at the level, the ground level, but you can only imagine what that's going to be like years to come if kids miss out on educational opportunities. What do you guys think is the way that you deal with some of these problems, or what should we be doing differently at your level?
I think first and foremost, we have to listen to the subject matter experts. That's not being done. We're ignoring the educators. We're ignoring what they say. And specifically in my district, a lot of my district is very rural, and they have a higher rate of educators leaving the district area because they can get better pay in a highly, less rural area. And so one thing that I propose for my district is that we need to fund continued education credits. I don't think it's fair to expect educators to have all of these demands and have to maintain and go above and beyond and to not support that. So in my district specifically, I think we need to look at district-wide continuing education credits for our educators and provide those to them as a way to keep them around, essentially. But I think the biggest thing is listening first and foremost.
What else? Tom, as an educator yourself, what are you seeing that could be done, or do you think would be helpful to you? I recognize that you're a special education teacher, so you see a lot of maybe the lack of funding that sometimes that field has. What have you seen in those areas?
Sorry, I was having trouble getting unmuted there. It was not playing nice, especially in the area of special needs. There is, well, through the pandemic that we're into right now, they're really suffering because it's really tough for them to work e-learning situations compared to some of the other kids. So we need to figure out some way to work on that. Back to the funding part of it, the principal I had last year over at Kokomo he's working on his doctorate, so he was really into this funding of schools. And he and I sat down several times and went through the different fundings and the way that it's skewed against schools with lower income and special needs kids, higher number. It's really skewed against them. And he and I sit there and go through and he showed me the numbers of how it's totally impossible for some of these schools to get out of that hole where they can get more funding. My head just sitting there trying to figure all this out. So it's designed to go against the lower income schools, basically. And so when they say that they're paying more per pupil, well, when you take a school like where I was at that had only like 25-30% passing rate, and all the kids were on free or reduced lunch. It was really, really tough because where we needed more money was in the special needs in the area to help them out with social workers and guidance and work on that area. schools that are, I don't know, like Zionsville, Carmel, some of these other schools, when they get the same amount, they say, you know, they tell us they get the same amount per pupil as what another school does. But that's where most of these schools really need the help. When they have 80, 90% passing and other schools have 25, 30% passing, it just becomes impossible for these smaller schools or lower schools to get out of that hole. We had fantastic growth with our kids the year that I was there. The teachers and the staff worked really, really hard until March anyway, to showing growth. And we were getting kids that are coming up 1, 2, 3 grade levels. But you don't do that without the resources.
Part of the problem with the funding formula is that it currently rewards schools that have favorable migration patterns. And a couple of examples in the district, I know that last year, Brownsburg School Corporation, for example, had an additional 20 students coming in. And as a result of that, those 20 students required no additional cost associated with the school, but increased the school funding over $130,000. Because when you take those 20 students and spread them across 8 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and a high school, you don't need to hire a new teacher. Then in the westernmost part of my district, North Putnam County, Nicole Singer out there was actually stressing over the loss of 7 students from 2019 to 2020, because those 7 students now are going to cost her about between $42,000 to $45,000, and she only has 2 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 1 high school. So how does she balance her budget? And so she has a much more difficult problem with some of the migration patterns. And I'm sure Tabitha can speak more to it in the rural zones. But then we have all other issues out there. Also that year in North Putnam, we had not a single child out of 118 that graduated in 2019 go to college. Not one. We had 7 that joined the military, and all the rest sought employment through the Department of Workforce Development in Area 30. Yes, they teach good skills and they do a good job at Area 30, but part of the problem why Indiana has a brain drain is because of some of the legislative policies that we have in place, and we don't do enough to encourage. I mean, for example, they ought to have high-speed internet out there. I mean, they didn't even finish last school year. But we needed to have policies or things in place so that we encourage kids to go to college and so that they will stay here. Our universities, because of the legislative policies, actually brag about, for every 100 students that leave the state to go to school, 160 come in. Yes, that's a great testament to the quality of our universities. However, those 100 students that left to go to college, the majority of them stay out because they get better paying jobs out of the state. And the 160 that came in to go to college, guess what? They go home. They get better jobs because of what's in the state. Why? Because the Indiana median household income is $10,000 below the national median household income. And so we also need policies to do something to help retain that education so that we can attract better jobs to Indiana. It's more than just education. It's how education supports our industry.
Stan, you mentioned the disadvantages that rural schools have, and I thought of Joe, and I have talked many times about some of those disadvantages, some of the disadvantages of having a lack of internet, and just something like that a lot of us take for granted. And Joe, I wonder if you could speak about that and what can be done at the federal level, because you have a little different role if you were to be elected.
Well, you know, the driving concern is the lack of opportunity that comes with the absence of high-speed internet. Certainly, we need to talk about equity in education. So at the federal level, there are things that we can do, like fund implementing and bringing in high-speed internet. We don't do enough, and there's such a broad area that need that access. So, you know, as part of infrastructure, national infrastructure plan, certainly the House of Representatives, the Democrats have offered up a $2 trillion infrastructure package. It was a big part of Donald Trump's campaign in 2016 was infrastructure. It died immediately after the election, and it has never come back up again. So it is something I think the 117th Congress is going to have to take up. My concern is that we do not have a strong enough voice right now from this district in Congress when it comes to fighting for that infrastructure, those infrastructure dollars, if you will. And if we do not get this as part of that package, I see catastrophe, which is already developing, getting even worse in the rural areas. So, Congress has its role to play in providing a basic foundation upon which the state of Indiana can build a stronger education package. We certainly need to do that. I talk a great deal about the lack of equity in education. Laura has certainly touched on that. Tom has touched on that. Absolutely, all of you have done a wonderful job kind of explaining and laying out the groundwork of education here. So, at the federal level, we're going to bring dollars home, not just to my district, but to all 9 districts here in the state of Indiana. We have to do it, quite simply, in order to give ourselves that competitive edge on the market.
Yeah, and I know that's in my district, my son is doing e-learning now, but last year when we ended, we had a hard time. And I live in Monticello. I live in town in Monticello, and there were days that we just didn't have internet. And there's people who live in Buck Creek, which is right outside of Lafayette, they have no internet. My cousin, who is an educator and a teacher, has to go up to her mom's house to do work or to do anything with the internet. So that is a huge issue. And again, I think like Joe's comment, anything that any of us can do is going to affect more than just our district. It's going to affect the entire state. And I think that's something really important when we're looking at candidates and looking at the different issues across the state. It's not just going to impact District 7 because that's what I'm working towards. It's going to impact all of our educators and all of our students across the state.
And if I can just touch on, certainly Stan pointed out, we have allowed our Republican friends to control the language we use when we talk about education. And so they very much use business language, and they define education in terms of cost and not investment. And this is the problem. And so I think that, all of us, and I'm talking all of us, not just Democrats, need to understand that education is an investment in our future. We earn better when we learn more. So we have to take back control of that language when we talk about education. We have to own it. And certainly I'm trying. I know you are. And I think it is resonating. I know in the rural districts, certainly when I speak about education in terms of investment, people are listening. And I've had so many people say, you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. We're watching rural schools cut out programs. They're cutting out music. They're cutting out the extracurriculars. They're cutting out classes. This is a problem. They keep cutting and cutting and cutting to meet budgets that are becoming harder and harder to meet. And eventually there will be a breaking point. We're watching rural schools here in Indiana shut down grade schools and bus their children out of the county for their schooling. And these children are spending 2.5 hours each way on a bus, 5 hours a day on a school bus. No high-speed internet. The extracurriculars are gone. We've got a problem in the state, but it's also a problem in many of the flyover states. So it certainly is going to be, I think, a priority for the next administration.
I'd like to touch here on a couple of those things that you were talking about there. On the infrastructure, for example, it's not only the rural area. When I was over at Kokomo teaching, when this COVID-19 hit, and we went to e-learning. They ended up having to put expanded Wi-Fi into 5 different schools over there. So those that could come to the parking lot and sit there and do their homework and their assignments that way. So, you know, a city size of Kokomo, there's an issue there with dependable broadband. The other thing I want to kind of touch on too, when we're talking about education, I was putting together some information for an ed op that I'm writing on, and a lot of this, or all this information actually came from the Indiana Chamber, and they had their 2020 snapshot, and I listened to their and read their report on that. Indiana is not faring very well, and we're talking about a long time now of the GOP in power as far as business. For example, when you're talking about education, for example, Indiana, now they compared these stats to the 4 surrounding states. They also compared them to 6 competitive states, which are similar to Indiana, and they also compared to all 50 states. But when Indiana came on education, on degrees, such as bachelor's, associate, industry recognized certificates and certifications, Indiana ranks 38th and trails nearly all the neighbor states. So we aren't doing a very good job of training our people and keeping them here. So that's, you know, when we're 38th and people being certified beyond high school for something, and I always push with my kids, you know, I tell them you don't need to go to college, but, you know, you need to learn a trade, and most of the unions have very good apprenticeships. And I tell them, if you don't mind sometimes working some adverse weather, and you're gonna get a little dirty, but you can take home about $50,000 a year and be able to take care of your family and have good benefits out of the deal, and no student loans to worry about. Go to a plumber or electrician or operator, but you've got to have certain skills. You got to have your reading, you got to have your writing, and you got to have your math skills. Because if you're going to be a carpenter or a electrician or something, and you can't read a ruler, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So we really need to train these people to have a livable wage job and keep them here. And the other thing we're losing out on when people lose their jobs due to, you know, any number of things, you know, technology takes it over or whatever. Well, when you talk about a person 40 to 60 years old losing their job, they sit back and look and go, you know, what I do now. So we have to have a system to retrain them so that they can go back into that more diverse workforce and be ready to work on it. So, you know, out of our education system goes way beyond high school.
I agree, it goes way beyond high school, but I'm going to push back just a little bit. And it has to do with our economy. As I'm sure you know, we manufactured more than 50% of the world's manufacturing goods in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. But that was only because we destroyed every other manufacturing base in World War II. The economy changed to a global manufacturing base in 1978 when China opened their doors. And we're in the process of another change to a knowledge-based economy. Mm-hmm. Yes, if you're happy working for less than the median household income, you don't need to go to college. But that knowledge-based economy means advanced skills training. Certainly a journeyman mechanic, or, you know, a journeyman carpenter, plumber, high wire electrician, those types of things, or a college education. And that's more than 2/3 of all the jobs by 2025 is what most things are predicting. And so if you're not preparing yourself for that, if you're thinking the days of your father or your grandfather where you're going to go to work in a factory and produce something and have the great middle class standard of living, that's not going to be the case as it was in the 60s and 70s.
No, I agree there. And that's the other thing I tell my kids too. The days of them graduating from Kokomo High School and going to Chrysler and Delco and having a great paying job are over. Those
Yes.
days are over. But
Can
there
I-
are other ways that they can go other than, because not college isn't made out for everybody.
Well, no,
Correct.
it's not. It's absolutely not. And
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you a quick story about myself to show you how much it's not. My father had a lung taken out when I was in the 5th grade. He died my senior year of high school. Neighbors bought us groceries, helped out. I enlisted in the Air Force to escape poverty. I wanted to be a law enforcement, so I joined the Air Force Security Police, and I found myself guarding nuclear-loaded B-52s in Glasgow, Montana. The temperature fell to 72 degrees below zero, and at 65 below zero, they took the dogs in and left me out. Fortunately, my parents had always emphasized education. And so I knew then either that was going to be my life, that I was going to be left out when the dogs were taken in, or I could educate myself out of it. And I did. And I graduated from a state university, went back into the Air Force, flew B-52s, B-1s, and E-3s, and retired as a full colonel and had a very successful life because of public education.
Right.
Everybody doesn't light up and do it K through 12.
Right.
Some people figure it out a little bit later. But the point is, it needs to be there and present for the middle class, the working poor, and the poor.
So can I jump in, if I might? Being a lifelong factory guy, and I tell folks I'm the last generation to graduate from high school, go into a factory, and have a middle class life, and expect a long-term employment relationship with my employer. What we're seeing, though, in our industrial base are the jobs are becoming far more technical. They're requiring far more skills. They're requiring advanced training, lifelong, revisiting training, re-educating, relearning, if you will. So education is, I don't care whether you go into university or to community college. They both have value. But education is lifelong. It doesn't stop the day you get your diploma, your degree from college. We have to be ready, and affordability plays into this. The ability to afford college, to afford going to a trade school, the ability to afford to go to a community college. And what we're seeing is that affordability window is closing more and more so, especially where our colleges and universities are concerned. And we become more and more reliant, if you will, on Trump universities out there who are taking money and promising educations. This is a problem that we have, and it needs to be addressed. So it's not just that education be there, it also has to be affordable. And I think that's a role that Congress should be playing in seeing to it that the children we raise have the opportunity to pursue their dream, whether it be college, university, trade school. We need to see that those doors remain open. We compete in a world where every other developed nation on earth does just this. And we become reliant on their knowledge base to advance our economy. And I think we've got it backwards, and we need to re-own it.
I saw Laura wanted to speak, and then I'm going to let Tabitha speak too. I'm going to Laura, then Tabitha, okay?
I was just going to say that when I taught in high school, we had these very conversations with my students a lot. And with my 25-year-old son who spent 3 years in college saying he wanted to be a teacher, his last year in college, he decided that he was changing majors. He has a degree in political science and history with a specialty in journalism. And about a month ago, he decided he wanted to be a teacher again. So we've had these conversations, and we talk that some of my high school students would say things like, I don't need to worry about getting good grades because I'm going to just join the military. And the military is a great option for students, but they don't want dumb soldiers. They want smart, people
Yes.
that follow orders and can think for themselves. I have a Army Ranger who is a cousin. He is in Army Ranger training school. He trains Army Rangers, and he complains because he takes them out and drops them in the middle of nowhere and they have to find their way back. And then he's mad when they take too long to do that. So they want smart military minds in our armed forces. My entire family are union somethings. They're union electricians, they're carpenters, they're sheet metal workers, they're tin knockers, they're sprinkler fitters. They make great livings. But again, you have to be able to read and follow directions. The union apprentices for the electricians, they had an apprenticeship class of 20. Only 5 made it from the first year to the second year because they could not pass the apprenticeship classes. And I still can't figure out how that happened, because you go to class and they give you all the answers and you take the test and they've given you all of the answers. I don't know how they don't make it. So we talk in class about, you don't have to go to college to get a 4-year degree to become a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer, but you need to be able to study and learn to make a living, because you cannot just get a high school diploma and show up at a factory and expect to make a good living, because it's just not going to happen. In my district, the wage that you need to earn in order to make the bare minimum car payment, the bare minimum house payment or apartment, the bare minimum groceries is $9.45 an hour. That is not our minimum wage. So you need to have a better than a minimum wage job to survive. So we talk about that. And we try to get students to recognize that. And as a state, we need to recognize that not everybody is going to go to college. So we need to provide pathways that they can be successful in their other job options, whether it be military, whether it be a trade school, because those are great options for students to have, but they still need a foundation of some education to get there, because our military does not want stupid soldiers. They want people who have smarts and military minds, because they will not take everybody like they used to. And factory jobs are not what you just cannot just get a job and make your living. Now, if you want to work at McDonald's and flip burgers and make fries for the rest of your life, managers at McDonald's and managers at Chipotle make more than a teacher's salary in a year. So you do that, but you be the manager of that Chipotle and you make more money than I do, and that is awesome. But you're going to have to be able to do something other than just make a taco. So we talk about that in my classes.
Thanks, Laura. Tabitha, I want to give you a chance.
Yeah, so I'm actually I received a 21st century scholarship from high school. I attended Jeff High School, which is kind of the only the only city school in District 7, so to say, like big city school. And I received a 21st century scholarship, which meant I could go to university for free. So my first year I went to Ivy Tech because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And a Marine Corps recruiter called me and he said, "You want to come in and talk?" I said, "I'll come in and talk, but there's no way I'm going to join the Marine Corps." Well, I was misinformed about the Marine Corps. And so I think one thing we have to be proactive on is changing the perception. I worked for the recruiting station for 4 years, and there were so many people that thought that you could join the Marine Corps with a GED. You have to have a high school diploma or 15 college credits to join the Marine Corps if you have a GED. And so when we're looking at these other options, we have to look at the reality of them as well and start challenging those perceptions. I mean, the things I did in the Marine Corps, I couldn't even find that type of job in the civilian sector. I did so many jobs in the Marine Corps. But when we're talking about the military as an option, we then have to look at what are we doing to protect veterans when they come back. Indiana has an atrocious rate of veterans moving out of Indiana for a number of reasons, and that directly impacts our economy, and that's the way we can directly impact our economy. So when we're looking at education, we also have to look at the education of our veterans and what they get in service, and we need to do a better job about recognizing their certificates that they get while they are in the military. My husband was a physical therapist in the Navy for 8 years. He was the only physical therapist stationed at Djibouti, Africa, yet when he got out, he couldn't do physical therapy. It didn't qualify. So we have to do more as a state to make sure that we're recognizing those things and we're setting them up for that, as well as, you know, the Marine Corps offers an NROTC scholarship, $180,000 to any university of your choice that offers NROTC. Study whatever you want, and then you get a promised career at the end of it. So there are ways that we just also need to better inform and make sure that our schools are allowing this information to get in. I never met a recruiter in high school, and we need to make sure that our children have access to all the information to know all of their options.
That's a real interesting statement, Tabitha. I did a text blast this weekend, and I got feedback from an individual wanting to know what I would do to bar the doors so that military recruiters would not be allowed into our high schools.
What was your answer?
Well, they federally can't do that, just so they know. They cannot
Right.
deny,
No.
they can't deny the military anything unless they deny all of the colleges. And so again, that's a perception that when I was in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia, that you have to see the value, and you have to know that, like, especially as a female, there were so many. So I would take educators to Paris Island for a week and show them the entire transformation from Marine to civilian. And there were so many female educators that were like, if I knew this was what it was, like, that's what I should have done to start out. Like, I could have had college paid for, but they didn't know about it. And so I think we have to take that approach as well, that we have to make sure that our students are properly informed and challenge some of those perceptions.
You are exactly right, because I personally know a woman that was going to join the military after high school and never went into the recruiter because she had been told at the time that you don't have the skills that they want or that they need. It wasn't that she was certainly smart enough to test into those jobs, but just aware that the benefits and the training and the things that come with a military option.
Absolutely. So I'm going to throw a little bit of a monkey wrench into this topic. This is great discussion, guys. This is why we got these really smart people here with us today. In light of COVID, in light of schools reopening, how are we going to support schools to open safely, or choose not to open at all if that's the best thing to do? What do we need to be doing, or what can you be doing at your level? And I open that up to anyone who wants to speak up, so just jump in.
My school is open. We're open full-time, 5 days a week. We have about 100, so there's about 650 students usually in our school. There's probably about 125-ish that are doing digital. One thing that we have found is that our digital classes, particularly in my grade level, are too big to support what they thought. So sometime in the next week or so, they're going to buy out my prep period and I'm going to get a digital class. And that is pretty much the entire 8th grade teaching staff now. It's going to have their prep periods bought out because there's just too many students on digital. In class, I wear a mask, all my students wear a mask, and then we stop class about 5 minutes early. The students pack up their backpacks and they get paper towel and their desk sprayed off, and they clean off their desks. They do not meet in the gym before school. They come to my classroom and sit in there. If they eat breakfast, they get it grab and go, and they come and they eat it in the classrooms. Lunches are half the students eat in the cafeteria and the other half eat in the gym, so they can be spread out like every other seat. And students are allowed to carry around water bottles because all of the drinking fountains are shut off. So those are kind of some of the things that we do. So far, the students are doing really well about keeping on their masks. They're doing really well cleaning off the desks. A couple times a day, I might have to tell somebody that the mask covers their nose. But you know, pretty much they're doing a really good job about that. For schools that open virtually, I think it's important, like the congressperson who said that they're going to cut 15% of the funding by not opening full time, that was just a slap in the face to schools, because teachers are doing all of the work anyway. They're going in, they are preparing the classes, they are making, like, all of our 8th grade teachers are losing their prep, so they have no extra prep time. The school is the teacher sits in front of the computer. If I have a class at 8 o'clock on the computer, I sit in front of my computer at 8 o'clock. I do my teaching in front of the computer at 8 o'clock. Our custodians are working twice as hard to do that. And we are going through probably at least 3 times the budget in cleaning materials. I started off on the first day of school with a bucket of 400 Clorox wipes, and I was out of those within 3 days because I have classes of more than 30. So I went through 400 Clorox wipes in more than 3 days, and now I've got a spray bottle and paper towel. So we're doing extra cleaning. And then the waste that we're going through it's ridiculous amount of waste, because instead of washing our trays and our silverware, it's all disposable trays and silverware to minimize the number of contacts that we have. So our budget for disposables has gone up like immensely, like exponential growth on amounts of paper towels and wet wipes and cleaning supplies. So cutting our budget is the exact opposite of what needs to happen. We need to increase our budget because our custodians are working harder. Our nurses, if we have a student that has a cough, a runny nose, a headache, a sore throat, a fever, a stomach ache, fatigue, or chills, we have to send them to be evaluated for COVID symptoms. And if it's not like runny nose because of allergies and a stomach ache because they didn't eat breakfast, then they get sent home for 10 to 14 days. And then they have to call every family member that they have. If they have 5 siblings in 5 different buildings, all of those siblings get home for 10 to 14 days. So we've sent home like 25 kids. So everything is just so much more the cost. And so cutting our budget is the opposite of what needs to happen. And that's just in my district in one building. So every building would be the same way. We have 7 buildings. So every building has that exact problem.
So it sounds like we have schools that are already being underfunded, are even going to have a greater funding crisis because we're going to be spending more money or have more need for PPE and all of these things moving forward. I open it up to the rest of you. Like, what do we need to be doing, or how can we make that case? Because Laura, you've made a very good point. This is front line. This is what's happening. How do we take that information and address that?
Unfortunately, the pro tem of the Senate sent out a letter, excuse me, talking about that 15% reduction in funding for every school corporation that is not in session. If they do 50% or more of their classwork virtually, that they're going to only get funded at 85%, which is what the current statute has. The idea that our legislature doesn't reconvene on special session or be able to address some of these issues for funding prior to January is just ridiculous. Are the school corporations taking that into consideration as they're making opening or closing decisions? They absolutely are. I know that the Avon School Corporation, the very first day had its first case. By the third day, it had its second case. By the time they were in school a week, we had over 300 kids at the high school on home quarantine because of people that had come down or had been near somebody and causing the problem. And so right now they took a week off and then we're doing virtual. I attended those meetings and listened to the number of people that were there. And the big argument is, well, the kids want to be in school. And my thought was, I'm a father of 5 children and a grandfather of 10. The last time I let my 16 or 17-year-old child make a life-altering decision, it never happened. Grow up, be an adult, legislate, and do what's right for these kids. Anything in regards to education, I'm sorry, can be fixed when we have a vaccine. I don't care if we go to year-round school or what is necessary on the backside, things can be fixed. Yes, it would have been better if the president would have done a better job up front, and we wouldn't be 4% of the population with what, 25, 27% of the cases or whatever the number is, and unable to travel to 33 countries. If we'd have done a better job in managing it, we wouldn't be having this issue now. But the state, the idea that they wouldn't come back to special session or even call for it, I'm very disappointed in our legislature. I'm very disappointed in some of our school corporations that have bowed to that pressure put on by the legislature, and the legislature bowing to the pressure put on by Washington.
I'd like to jump in here because I buried 2 children. And I will tell you that I believe that there is a severe lack of moral and ethical judgment in driving children back into a school in the middle of a pandemic. And if we lose just one child, we've lost too many. And I will tell you that the idea that we could reopen our education system without any kind of comprehensive plan coming from the federal government, the state government, it was thrown out there, do the best you can, and everybody pretend it's normal, is insane. It is insanity. We should not be doing it. We should have demanded that we have a plan in place, a comprehensive plan. The day we shut down the country, we should have been developing plans to reopen, and we did not. And I understand that, well, my children don't want to be disappointed. We don't want to disappoint the children. And Stan, you're absolutely right. At some point, you got to make a decision as to whether or not their life is worth battling that disappointment, that angst. And I have been against the reopening of schools the way that we're doing it. It's wrong. It's unethical. We're using our children like lab rats, and we're exposing adults in the process.
Canaries in a coal mine.
Correct.
And I also think that, like, at least in my district, it was like people were scared to have a conversation because the minute they tried to converse, to have a solution, or to think of all of the things instead of just one portion of it, they would get attacked. And I think that that's a huge issue that our elected officials have to do better at being servant leaders and having hard conversations, and willing to have hard conversations and to look at the entire picture. From when we're talking about if schools aren't in session, you know, I'm privileged. My son didn't go to school because my husband's a stay-at-home dad, because I'm a disabled veteran and have so many appointments that I couldn't stay home with my child. So we have to look at that too when we're discussing it. Most people in my district are not privileged where they could stay home with their child. And our legislators have to be looking at that. Like you said, Joe, from the get-go, there should have been a plot or a plan or a brainstorming at the very least of, we know that this amount of children probably aren't going to have care. How are we going to facilitate that to make sure that we can go this route? And instead, I felt like very much arguing, we're opening or we're not, instead of taking the time to talk about the solutions and the resolutions and being proactive in that.
I'll have to say that I think our school leaders in my school corporation have been very open in discussing issues with teachers. Teachers and the teachers union have been like right there the whole time talking with things. So I think their plan is as good as it can be, and they're working with people. I know that across the board, there's a lot of conversations, and if you talk to people online, they always kind of break it down into a couple different categories. They say, on one hand, you want to bring students back, and on the other hand, sometimes home is not the safest place to be, and special ed students don't have the same equity in learning, and they have difficulties. And broadband internet is not available to everybody, so they can't learn online. And you always have those discussions on, is it better to be in person with the chance of getting coronavirus, or is it better to be at home where it's not, where home might not be safe? And so I think in a lot of schools, that's why the option of you can go virtual or you can go in person. And so in our building, like we have, like I said, about 125 students went virtual and then the rest went online. And nobody is completely happy in either case because teachers are nervous. They're wearing masks. Nobody likes to wear the masks. They have to clean the desks. And students are doing a really good job of doing that. But you have all the extra waste and all the extra costs and all that other stuff. And then on the virtual side, the parents are more, my kid's not doing the homework on time. How do I make him do the homework? And the internet is slow. And, you know, all of it together has just been a big mess. And as Joe said, if we would have started looking at it the day we shut down our country, some of this mess could have been avoided.
Well, and to be honest, what this pandemic has exposed, I think, are a lot of these issues that the education process has suffered quietly for a very long time. And certainly the challenges that Laura and Tom had pointed out, the special needs education, the lack of equity in opportunity to choose to even have the choice to stay at home or to go into a classroom. So, you know, I hope at the very least, the very same people who failed to plan for the reopening of schools are now looking at the exposed fissures in our education system and are at least willing to discuss fixing them, which, you know, under current administration, both at the federal and state level, I strongly suspect they're not. I strongly suspect that they will continue to push this idea that we can return to normal and everything's going to be just fine in the long run. So it is my hope that the next group of elected officials at the state and federal level are going to sit down and take a very hard look at what our experience has been and then begin to develop a comprehensive plan to address it, because this isn't the last pandemic we're going to experience. The world is getting smaller. We travel more internationally. You only have to look at the airline flights. You can go online and see and understand that the virus that came into the country on the West Coast was not the same virus that came into the country on the East Coast. They were different strains. It had mutated. The East Coast had mutated. So, you know, we have a lot to talk about going forward. We have a lot to think about. And I don't intend to let anyone off the hook who wins the next election cycle. I don't care who they are. They better come to the table ready to discuss, ready to develop, and ready to implement plans that protect both our children, all our children, and our families.
So, you know, a lot of thoughts, and it sounds like, you know, this has been a little bit of what kind of made me a little uncomfortable, but it's true, is this has been a little bit of an experiment. We weren't ready for it. We didn't. And the scary thing is, if we don't at least learn something from this, where are we going to be a year from now? Oh, the virus goes away. Well, like you said, other viruses might come. I would hate for us to go through this and not make the changes that need to be made. We have a few minutes left here. We're coming up on 7 o'clock, and I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity just to talk for a minute about your campaign, where your constituents to go to learn more about you individually, and we'll just go around, say 2 or 3 minutes each and just kind of finish up, okay? Tom, would you be comfortable with going first?
Certainly. All right. Thanks, Kyle. First of all, I would really want to commend Laura and Logan Source Schools for what they're doing down there. That's fantastic. And Joe's exactly right. We really got to look at it hard. But every school corporation, every school is going to be a little different. Clinton Central, for example, they just shut down for 2 weeks due to outbreak down there. So you can't, there's not going to be a cookie cutter type solutions. But you're exactly right. We got to sit down and we got to look at every scenario and every possibility. And I was kind of disappointed since I didn't have a classroom to open up for this first part of August. But on the other side, I was happy I didn't have a classroom to open up this first part of August. So, you know, I really want to keep in touch with what's going on at each one of these different schools. And I have several administrators and teachers that I know once I get down to the State House, they're going to have me on speed dial, and I'm going to have them on speed dial so we can find out, you know, what works, what didn't work, what kind of plan can we come up with. But you're exactly right. As far as contacting me, my email is tomheddy hd38@gmail.com. That's TOMHEDDEHD38@gmail.com. My phone number is 765-412-0224. I have that on my Gmails. I have that on my cards. I haven't had any problems with people calling me that just kind of blow things up. So, you know, it's not a huge deal, but I think people that want to call me and talk, we solve some solutions that way. It's vitally important that not only in the 38th district, but the whole statewide, that we solve this problem. And we also need to look at environmental issues that are going on. There are just so many things, agricultural, manufacturing. There are just so many things that are going on. And what I talked about earlier on the Indiana Chamber on their report, for them to come out and say that Indiana's not doing so well with what we thought, and we've had so long with the GOP and supermajority down there, that is so much for allowing business take care of itself. Education is not designed to be for profit, and so we need to change some things back. So the 38th district covers parts of Carroll, Cass, Clinton, and Howard counties. So anybody inside that or around that, there's 10 different corporations that I cover parts of the kids. So by all means, get a hold of me. We're going to really start ramping this thing up. We got about 70 days to go to here to Election Day. I've been running off copies, start doing a lot of phone calling. I was over Walton today, doing a lot of door-to-door hanging, and we're just hanging door knockers rather than actually knocking on the door, because some people don't want to come to the door, and you know, it may not be healthy. So we're talking about social distancing in the school. We also have to look at social distancing everywhere. If people, I just seen a statistic today, if 80% of the people would wear masks in a short period of time, we'd have this thing flattened out. But as long as, you know, people, you walk in to a restaurant or a gas station or somewhere and employees aren't wearing masks, and people walking in there aren't wearing masks, and you just want to strangle them. You know, I wear my mask for you, and I expect you to wear your mask for me. So we really have to emphasize wearing masks, and that would be the biggest asset of solving this problem. So November 3rd, or actually before, coming, what is it, November 6th, I think we started early voting, or October 6th, early voting. I encourage people to get out and early vote. If you're concerned about mail-in ballots, get out and early vote. The crowds are usually smaller. I know here in Carroll County, they usually do it every Saturday up until Election Day, and the crowds are smaller. You can get in and out without really having a major problem there. So, you know, if you're concerned about the mail-in, go do early voting. So, and, you know, I appreciate your vote on November 3rd or before. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Tom. Stan, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Stan Allball. I'm a retired Air Force colonel with over 30 years of active duty service. The central planks of my platform center around education, jobs in the economy, healthcare, and social injustice. My website is stanallball.com. You can go on there and get more information about me. My phone number is on there, and an email is also just stanallball@gmail.com. You can do that or get it through the website. My campaign has been very active, also doing no contact literature drops. We had 24 volunteers out on Saturday. I think on Saturday we hit a little over 7,000 voter contacts. We've been very active doing lit drops, text banking, and phone banking. I also want to say something about the district. District 24 is all of Hendricks County with the exception of Guilford or Liberty Township, and it's the north half of Putnam County. And for the past decade, the Republicans have been saying that a Democrat can't win here. I'm sitting here to tell you that that is not true. We did polling in June, and we've now, the district has officially been categorized as a purple flippable district. The Carpenters Union also did some polling and is indicating that the race is absolutely tightening. What we need to do, because Hendricks County is the second fastest growing county over the past decade, averaging 17% of growth. We appreciate all those urbanites moving out to the burbs because of our schools, with our 2 of our school corporations in the top 10. We appreciate that, but we need to make sure that you get your voter registration updated for your new address and you come out to vote. If you come out to vote, we can make some changes. Please vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Okay, Laura, I'll let you go ahead.
All right, my name is Laura Fred Smith, and I am running in Senate District 18. Senate District 18 covers all of Cass, Fulton, Miami County, half of Carroll, half of Marshall, and half of Kosciuszko County. So there's about 6 counties in my district. I am a full-time teacher. This is my 20th year that I've started teaching, so it's been a while. I believe in the power of public education and teachers. So the education, as we've talked about and we've seen, it touches all aspects of policies. We talked about broadband internet. We talked about wages and the importance of wages. We talk about, in my classes, we talk about how education and suicide awareness go together. So suicide and suicide prevention, as Tabitha mentioned, it talked about Veterans Affairs. And she's right, 5,000 veterans a year leave our state, and it's because of health care. So education and health are together. So those are some things in my platform. I also talk about the environment a lot because in Cass County we have a large environmental polluter that we've been working on and having a little bit of success lately and some wins in some county. So we talk about that. The best way to contact me is probably on my Facebook page because I update that the most. It's Laura for Senate. You can find me on Facebook. I answer every email I get. So it is lauraforsenate18@gmail.com. And I have a website if you want to read a blog that I have. It is lfsfor18.com. That's my initials, Laura Fred Smith, 4 and then the number 18, because that is my district. So as Tom said, it is really important to get out and vote. I am running in a district that has been unopposed Republican since at least 2008. So this is the first year that this seat has been vulnerable. The person that is sitting there now, she was caucused in when the longtime senator took a job as the Pulaski County prosecutor. So she is just keeping my seat warm. Everybody just needs to go out and vote. And this will also be the first time since 1978 a woman has been elected to this seat. So a couple big years that we're having in this district. So everybody needs to go out and vote on this district. Early voting starts on October 6th. And we will take your vote all the way up until November 3rd when the polls close. So get in line, vote early, and vote for Laura Fred Smith in District 18. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Tabitha, tell us how we can contact you or how your constituents can.
I'm Tabitha Bartley. I'm a disabled Marine Corps veteran. I'm a wife and a mother, and I'm running for District 7, which covers portions of Tippecanoe County, Carroll County, Cass County, Jasper County, Boone County, and all of White County. So my district is a very wide district with a lot of different issues and things that I'm focusing on. I personally think we have to better support our education system. We have to have more accessible and accountable care when it comes to veteran support. and we have to have a better quality of life for everybody. Every Thursday on Facebook Live, I do Tea Talk with Tab at 5:30. So I encourage you to enjoy that. That's an open discussion because I think we need more servant leaders in positions of power who are willing to listen and have hard conversations. You can also follow my handle, which is Bartley for Indiana, or my hashtag, which is Bartley for Indiana. And I will include those links after we go live as well.
All right, thank you, Tabitha. And Joe, I'll let you tell your constituents how they can contact you, and you can close us out tonight.
Thank you all. First off, Tabitha, Stan, thank you for your service to the country. I certainly wish you well in your campaigns. I'm here to help in any way I can. Laura Fred Smith and Tom Hetty, God bless you. You're in the classrooms. You're down there in the trenches. I certainly, you are in my prayers. I'm Joe Mackey. I'm running for Congress in Indiana's 4th Congressional District. You can find me at joe4hoosiers. That's joe4hoosiers.com. I am also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I look forward to hearing from you. I would encourage those that live in the districts for the candidates who are with us tonight to get out and vote. It is time to break the supermajority, and it is time to redirect the focus of our federal government back on the priorities of this country. So I thank you for joining us tonight. Kyle, you've done a wonderful job. You're a natural at this. Undoubtedly, we will all get together again soon in the future. Thank you for your work tonight.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a wonderful time spending it with you all, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.